And there we are live. This is the transfer show with myself and Mr. Dave Davis as we go through the latest stories and rumours of all sorts of levels of believability and huge levels of interest to us. We have a lot to cram in to this hour, Dave, so we're just going to get right to it, buddy, because it feels like one of those ones where we've enough skills to knock over here that we can't really dwell too long on any one thing. And obviously, the place to go, the most controversial of all the stories, and the one that I think has people's imaginations firing the most, is this De Bruyne thing, where Di Marzio was saying that it was potential. And then we saw, was it this morning, Ian Doyle doing the echo, bad news Doyle, and saying that there is no contact or no offer on the table from Liverpool. Just talk us through this as a feasible possibility, or where it emanated from, or what you think of it.
We haven't had a chance to use the Roy Hodgson style gif, hadn't we? The exciting type of thing. So that's now in place for the summer. The only thing is, when this breaks, and it's a line in his article about, De Bruyne and Napoli, but Liverpool have made him an offer, and people are like, oh, just the way that just slipped in all of a sudden. And then it came out, and you were thinking of the time, we were all like, this is going to be shot down by 10 o'clock or something, isn't it? But it wasn't. It survived Wednesday evening. However, it did not survive Thursday morning. Ian Doyle comes out and says specifically, Liverpool have not made a contract offer to De Bruyne. And I suppose it is what it is a little bit. People, you wonder if people run away with the fans. We don't really know, or maybe never know fully. But all we can do is operate on the basis that, as James Pearce said, as Ian Doyle said, Liverpool have not made an offer for Kevin De Bruyne.
I think people had lots of different reasons why they were so excited about that as a possibility. One was just the pure piss boiling of it. Two was the idea that maybe he could really, really be a fantastic asset in 50% of the games or something like that.
Yeah.
Or maybe he'll have some sort of career renaissance. So you can understand why people are getting their eyes absolutely turned by it. But as it stands, as you said, cold water has been poured all over it by the local journos. So we will leave that one sit for now until, if anything ever comes up of it again. And we'll move to our next story. And it's we didn't get a chance to talk about this. We spoke about the possibility, and we were both pretty much sort of willing it into existence, doing the old rub the temples and manifest with Julian Alvarez, a player that both of us, whether it's everyone's cup of tea or not, we're very, very, very interested in playing for Liverpool. And then we had this story that broke via Sam Maguire, where the details were all about creative exchange in terms of the finances to make a deal happen. Now, you and I were saying, well, this would be great. And there was a rumor going around about it. And then we were thinking, but would they really want Darwin Núñez? And I can see why Alvarez would want to return to the Premier League to play for the champions, but the opposite move didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So where are we with this in terms of what Sam broke and any kind of hopes that people have around it? Because I see in the chat there, Thomas said, can we skip the formalities, get straight to Alvarez? This is the one that people are getting excited about.
I'll phrase this delicately when I talk about his character. He's a smug bastard, Sam Maguire, but he gets a lot right, to be fair. I'll phrase it in that regard. And people will say, because this one's absolute nonsense, well, you got to be fair. He had the Núñez, Saudi, Osimhen exclusive, and what came out, as many other journalists have now commented on. And there has been stories, hasn't there, like we drew last week, that Atletico like Darwin, and obviously the original story that Sam had as well, that Liverpool were looking at Julian Alvarez, and we put 2 and 2 to get 27,000 because we didn't care what Summit came up with. We were just manifesting it and praying to all the gods we could muster.
Baby gift.
Yeah, just a baby, like whatever it takes, basically. And then this comes out that Liverpool will do creative accounting, basically, with, Atletico, the way they want, to get Alvarez done. Now, it doesn't mean it's guaranteed, it's not close, it's not definite, but if you can do this creatively, does anyone actually give us stuff if we sell like Darwin Núñez for a chalk ice and Avatar on Blu-ray? Who gives a shit if you can get Julian Alvarez through the door? Do you know what I mean? And before people say, no chance, this won't happen, Atletico have got form for this, by the way. People forget when Atletico did the deal with Chelsea. Do you remember when Conor Gallagher came in and João Felix? They quite carefully massaged those figures and stretched them over terms. Atletico will work on that basis as well. So I don't care right now what other people think. I am all in on this. If we get Julian Alvarez, this is, people, the signing of the summer. A front line with Alvarez and Salah. It's erotic. Simple as that.
I know people are getting very excited this evening because we have white smoke in the Vatican. But I'll be honest with you, this is the arrival. This is the new arrival that would make me very, very, very happy. I just think, like you, I can't see a downside to Alvarez as a footballer for Liverpool. Yeah, Red for Life picking up on your erotic angle here. Good stuff. Yeah, well, there's nothing more to be said about it then until we hear. But what you are saying is that not only is there a bit of heft to Young Maguire's article, but there is a precedent there at Atletico for this type of deal. So let's see how it goes. Let's see how it goes. Nothing new or extra to be said on it apart from that. So we're not going to talk it to death. We do need to talk about Trent. Not Trent leaving, because I think everyone's talked out on that. But the Club World Cup element is a good one. And it's worth talking about because it has the potential to add some money to the summer coffers. And it also has the potential to be an opportunity for the club to say, screw you, to Real Madrid. So a lot of people are quite split on this. What's the latest on that? And is it actually true that that is an existing sort of offer approach from Real?
Yeah, it absolutely is. The last official report, if you want to call it that you can get on this, and Paul Joyce and others have commented on this, Real Madrid have spoken to Liverpool about this. And everyone's kind of waiting to see, aren't they? I mean, I would bet good money this is one of the first questions that comes up in Arne Slot's press conference, isn't it? I mean, he will straight bat it away. But all we can do is work on the basis that is what is said in the press, various reports, that Real Madrid are speaking to Liverpool about getting Trent released early from his contract or paying compensate, however you wish to phrase it, so we can pay and play in the Club World Cup. I don't know. I just think just get whatever you can for him now, because you book it as profit under PSR as well straight away, even if it's a couple of million. Just get it done so there's no awkwardness on the last day, no ill sentiment, etc. on the parade. But will they do that? We'll have to see.
I have one question for you because it's something that's been preoccupying me for a while, and I wanted to ask you about it live in the show to see if you had any take on it. Why do you think that announcement happened when it happened? You know, to play in a game that we lost and then come out with it afterwards. Why not the week before when the title had been secured? Why not the last game when there's a trophy in everybody's line of sight and they're going to be a lot more high on various endorphins? It's odd to me. And is it just connected to this nonsense that we've just been speaking about? Is that what it comes down to, do you think?
Yeah, 100%. If you ask me to bet, I think it is basically because they knew this was going to come out and Real Madrid are trying for the Club World Cup. Also, it means things can start moving forward. So, yeah, it is what it is. We shouldn't really waste too much more time on him, should we?
That's kind of how I feel about it. And I definitely don't want to see the guy playing between now and the end of the season. So we'll see how that one works out. But we do have other stuff that's a little bit more hopeful. I think you and I had a dark fear that Alisson might fancy a move or might just be about to call time in his Liverpool career. And then we read that incredible piece by the man in the Players' Tribune. So good, in fact, that I photocopied it. I made a Word document out of it and photocopied it to show to my senior students as a piece of incredible personal writing. It's just an absolute treat to read and so effective, so powerful. But around about the same time, we had Taffarel, who's his big idol, coming out and saying that, Ali feels like he has more to give back and he wants to reward the people that, he's feels loyalty to. And this is incredibly encouraging and could leave us in this embarrassment of riches situation next year.
I hope there's a real truth to this, because we've talked before, haven't we, about Alisson, Saudi fears, and how the Saudi are clearly tracing a big goalkeeper for the Club World Cup. And we did have our fears. We've heard many things on this. But Taffarel, the close relationship they have. I mean, let's be honest. The only reason Taffarel's at the club is because Alisson's there. When Alisson departs, Taffarel will go. There's zero doubt about that. But to hear him specifically say it, and it's this choice of worded, isn't it? Ali wants to continue living this way. I saw this wave of Saudi opportunities, very high offers. Yeah, I bet you've seen the wave. I bet you know some details about that wave as well. But Ali always says, wow, I want to continue this story because I owe a lot to them and I want to continue this life here. You're just wondering kind of, he's seen Mo, he's seen Virgil commit, he's seen the scenes. He was a big part of them. You just hope, maybe it's romanticizing, but like you say with the Players' Tribune piece, which was unbelievable, that he's just in that sentiment. And Marmadashvili coming in, great and all that, but we don't really care too much if you can keep Alisson as long as you possibly can.
I can't think of anything I want to see more in my life in the future than that big bearded, beautiful bastard hugging another European Cup. That's one of my favorite pictures from all of that era. And I just want to see it again. And, it is interesting because I'm sure Taffarel will be thinking, maybe I could get some of this generational wealth if we do a Saudi thing. And it could still be on the table for both of them down the line.
Yeah.
But the longer Ali stays with us, the happier we'll all be. Obviously, there are other knock-on goalkeeper stuff that we could talk about. We just don't have time tonight, but we'll come back to some of those stories at a different time. The next one we want to talk about is Ibou Konate. Again, lots of noise around Konate at the moment. Suggestions of interest from various clubs for Konate at the moment, including Real and amongst others. And with his contract situation, people are now dreading a repeat of the Trent thing. And I think people have taken it quite hard, and understandably so. And so I saw a distinct lack of sympathy for Konate if he was in the position that people are painting him into. We don't know the full truth of this, but I think we do know, Dave, don't we, that there is some space between what he's asking for and what the club are willing to give him.
Yeah. Konate said, didn't he, that's between me and the club, after we won the league, and that they'll stay private. But all the reports, which I'm sure you've all, all seen, you all read, suggesting that there's still this big gap between what he's asking for and what Liverpool are offering right now. And we said it on the last pod, didn't we? I just have this fear a little bit, maybe fear's too strong, that Konate is almost the hill the bean counters will die on, as in we can't just bend to every single contract and give everyone what they want. Yes, you make exceptions for a Salah. Yes, of course, you make exceptions for a Van Dijk as well. But I just wonder if this is the one that they do stand their ground and say, no, we're not going to do what he wants or give him the level he wants, which if that is the case, we'll have to see what develops. And people have talked about Huijsen, and we know we've given our thoughts on that. I want, Konate to stay. I think he's such an important element, but I kind of get it with the figures that are being mentioned as well. Is he worth that? That is a big ask, but I just don't want to change too much in a defence that's seeing the leading right back go as well. But as it stands right now, if they're miles apart, he's got to go this summer, hasn't he? We can't have another one where you're letting like a big asset like that run down on a free, Trev. It's as simple as that for me. If he will not sign, if we cannot bridge that gap, I don't like saying this, I feel dirty almost, but it's the right thing for the club to sell for what, 60 million or so, rather than let a freebie go again in the summer.
It's complicated though, isn't it? It's complicated by the situation that you've alluded to there with the defence and the partial or very, very substantial overhaul that may be about to happen. We know left back, that's a whole separate issue. But Kwanzaa comes into the conversation here. And just briefly as well, we might as well allude to it because we've gone big on talking about Huijsen in the past. And I saw a story that you had sent me and I came across myself, that whichever, I can't even remember, whichever of the whispering voices in his ear, I think there's more than he has shoulders trying to influence him. It appears as if the Real one may have sort of won at the moment. That's the current take on things. So it is very, very complicated because you can't lose a player like Ibu Konate and not replace with high quality. And if a very unreliable in terms of availability Joe Gomez and a Kwanzaa are your options, well, that's complicated because what's the Kwanzaa situation at the moment?
We said this before that I don't think anyone needs any evidence that Arne Slot is not a big Jarell Kwanzaa fan. You can see that in the minutes. You can see that even when Joe Gomez is fit, he's been picked before him. It's more Kwanzaa, in fact, people have ignored a little bit. I see when they do reviews and say about him, a lot of his minutes have come at right back because there's nowhere else, is there really? Or there's no one else who can play right back. He's just clearly, all our info is not particularly fancied by Arne Slot. But who he is fancied by big time, and there's been a few stories around this, is Newcastle. Now, before anyone jumps on this is not us saying that he's going to be used as a mate weight for Isak or anything like that. All we're saying is Arne Slot does not fancy Jarell Kwanzaa as our info. Newcastle really do. It's just the fact that we're also looking at centre-halves as well. It's hard to see at the moment. If he stays next season, where's he going to get his minutes? Even long-term, you've got question marks. And I've seen a lot of people suggest even that maybe a loan for Jarell Kwanzaa is the best thing, to build up his minutes, protect his value that way. But listen, if someone puts money on the table that we're suitable for and happy with, I think Jarell Kwanzaa leaves.
Now, we're going to come back to Newcastle with a very strong link to another squad member who may be on the move. But before we get there, let's just recap and revisit the Luis Diaz situation.
Yeah.
And did I or did I not see Diogo Jota linked to at least 2 Premier League clubs during the week?
Crazy. Yeah. It's Luis Diaz is a weird one because Sky Sports had it, didn't they, on to say like the breaking news at the end of the season, they'll be there. And Steve Sierra, or people know, Colombian journalist, broke the news, mentioned, Luis Diaz wants a new contract. And trying to dig around to find if there's anything new on this. No, is the honest answer. No one seems to have this. It's a little bit like there's suspicion. I have to be careful how I phrase this, but suspicions that the Diaz camp might well be quite comfortable, as we know, in speaking, shall we say, or encouraging things. But genuinely, just being completely honest about it, we don't have anything new that this talk is set to happen with Diaz people from anyone reliable or from digging around for it as we do. So that one, we'll have to see on that. And Diogo Jota, I try not to be too derogatory because he's a guy who's been brilliant for us and had all these things, but we've all seen his performance in the second half of the season. Maybe other teams haven't though, Trev, because there's a number of suitors have asked Liverpool about Diogo Jota, and Nottingham Forest are in the mix now as well. I've made an inquiry for Diogo Jota. I don't want to be derogatory about an existing player. And the reason I feel sad about Diogo Jota is we've seen him in his pomp and it's brilliant. the goals, the slalom runs, and all those types of things. But he just looks a million miles off it at the moment. And I just wonder, this is what no one's sure about, what will it take for him to be moved on, shall we say? But he isn't getting that renewal he's looking for. No chance at all.
Yeah. I heard something that he had fallen out with Nuno at Wolves. And then I heard about a link back to Wolves as well. But the Forest one is definitely the one that had the most interest. Dave, as we walk through this, it becomes very apparent that the big summer rumor is probably for the first time in history not going to be a rumor, because a lot needs to get done. And it's probably way too much to do in one window.
Yeah.
And there will be ones that we just end up hanging on to that perhaps would, in a different situation, have moved. So it's going to be a matter of priorities. Like you say, Ibu Konate is a classic one of those. Where will we land there? But one guy who we do know has a lot of interest in him as well. And, what did he play? A maximum of about 3 games worth of minutes for the whole season. Is Harvey Elliott. And to go from where he was, which was so fancied by Kloppo, who said before he left that he wished he played Elliott more. Yeah. I don't think he possibly could have played Elliott more. He was a regular starter for Kloppo, and it's just such a different reality for him now. We all know that he's a good lad who loves the club and is thrilled to be a Red. He seems to be a popular kid, like so many of ours are. But he's going to have to make a call, because he is good enough to be playing at a Premier League level as a starter for many clubs. But maybe as things stand, if he's not fancied by our manager in the current setup and there's no real space for him, then it seems to be probably one of the more likely moves this summer, because he is a kid who could get a fee of a sizable amount. What's the latest link? Because I know Newcastle are in the mix.
Yeah, it's for those that can see it on the screen. It says a number of Premier League clubs interested, including Wolves. So doing some digging around this, because it almost comes back to that line that's come up a number of times, that Liverpool will be looking to add creativity to the team, especially with Trent going. And people have jumped on that and gone, well, Harvey's creative. Yeah, no doubts about that. That's his best asset, isn't it? The ability to pick a pass, just make things happen in tight situations. But it's quite clear Arne Slot doesn't fancy Harvey Elliott. I don't know what more evidence people need. And also, I like so much about Harvey Elliott as a character, but you think back to that Chelsea game, he didn't half struggle from the start, did he? He's just not, for me, a starter. He's half a foot too short and half a yard too slow, but his brain works quickly. That's what's got him to where he is so far. Trev, honestly, digging around on this, the call. The club are not going to force him out for all the reasons that you mentioned. Popular, guy, well-liked, happy to stay, happy to work hard. And he gave that interview about it, didn't he, as well, saying, I want to fight, I want to stay and all that. Which I love the sentiment. I love that. But when Wolves have clearly approached him and digging on this, Wolves are really trying to get Harvey Elliott. I don't want to be derogatory about Wolves, but I think he's better than Wolves, just in the nicest way, and where they are in the table as a player as well. Newcastle, like you said, Newcastle are big fans of Harvey Elliott as well. Dortmund have been mentioned, Brighton. Essentially, as you said, there's a lot of clubs would like Harvey Elliott. It's a decision that he really has to make, because when there's so many clubs saying, listen, you can come and be a star, a god at our club. Some are saying, we'll make you a real key cog of the team. That's the balance again, staying at the club you love. But let's be honest, you're going to be, sixth choice midfielder, probably at best. There's going to play. Slot's actually going to bring, I don't want to sound harsh, Slot's going to bring in players he wants now, isn't he, with Richard Hughes as well. So Harvey Elliott isn't going to go up the pecking order, is he? In simple terms. And when you're playing less than 1,000 minutes already, he's got a big call to make this summer, young Harvey.
I don't think he'll have any shortage of suitors, as you suggested. And, he will suit different systems of play better than what he obviously suits Arne Slot's. I think people are a little bit clouded by their fondness of him and his ever present nature under Kloppo, and we have to understand that we're in a whole new world here. And as you say, he ain't going up the pecking order over the summer as new recruits come in. So that's a really good point, and will probably be the thing that makes the decision for him. We have so many tasty links now to finish this section with. We'll talk about one of our manifestations later on. We'll talk about the most commonly linked player with Liverpool to finish off. But let's start with midfield. And we've already seen in the chat there at least one of these names pop up. You've mentioned on the show previously a couple of people that we were apparently interested in. Names that are not going to make people get all giddy or excited. But then, to be fair, Zubamendi didn't really either for a lot of people who didn't really know much about him. However, it seems as if our numbers guys have a new focus for their absolute passion and desire, a new sort of ideal numbers recruit that I'd love you to tell people about. Everyone will want to be saying, like you and I said before the mics went live here, everyone will want to be saying names like Baliba. We want to be saying them, like you said before we started. But I'm not sure that's really an option at the moment because there's no tangible or creditable links. We do, however, have links with names that won't be just as exciting to people, but maybe we need to go back to trusting our numbers boys on the recruitment front. Walk us through this whole midfield area, buddy.
Yeah, people, like you said, they're going to want names like, give me Wharton, give me Baleba. In short, no, that is not what we're being told. And we mentioned a few names, and I've got one on screen there, that we said Liverpool tried to get Dario Asugo from Sporting Lisbon, who's been on loan at Las Palmas, but beaten to him by Chelsea. Liverpool also had a look at Tom Bischoff at Hoffenheim. So there's kind of a similar profile then in terms of not necessarily a starting midfielder, but one, as you said, almost a nerd style signing, one that can be built up, or might be an educated punt. I will use that phrase from a nerd element. And the name is there on the screen. Now, when I first saw this name, I saw it in one of those, you get those random football transfer sites like Football Wilderness or Football Transfer Shagger or something like that, type of weird names. But
it's you.
Yeah, actually, you were like, what? But actually, dug on this, Liverpool have seriously looked at Amadou Kone, Reims midfielder. And if you look, for those that can see the screen on FB Ref, he's overlaid on Dario Asugo there. Notice how similar the profiles are, practically exact in a little way, Trev, as well. So I know it's not an exciting name that people want to hear Wharton, Baleba. And like Trev said, I would love to be giving you those names. I'm just telling you what we're getting told. So Kone is being looked at as a serious option. And the second name, which I think I saw mentioned, although there's a lot been mentioned in the chat panel as well, Angelo Stiller. Left-footed, German international, 4 caps he's got, Stuttgart. Very, very popular with a lot of people. And genuinely, yeah, Liverpool are absolutely looking at this player. But whether you like it or not, the information that we've got is there's a big discrepancy in what Stuttgart see him as worth and what we see him as worth right now. He's got a release clause, Trev, that comes in next summer, not this summer, but next, for about 36 million euros. So they're looking for, obviously, a premium on that. And they're thinking if we sell now, this is the highest we're going to get for obvious reasons. And talk about 60 million euros they're looking for. Our info is Liverpool see it a lot less. And in fact, if Stiller came in, they don't really see him as a starter straight away as well. He'd have to build up to get that. And they have a natural few concerns about the off the ball, the physical side. The big thing, again, and this is why we're talking about nerds, his XT. And people go, why are we talking about XT? Because it's important in terms of we've got to understand it from how Liverpool look at it. Stiller's XT is 0.23. That's more than double Grav, more than double Zabozlai, about double McAllister. So with Trent going, who's the best in the league with a 0.3 XT, that's why one of the reasons this boy is being looked at. Left-footed, great passer as well. It's the off the ball that's the concern. And that is why there's a big discrepancy right now in those valuations.
Very interesting stuff. And like I said, if we're going to be trusting our guys behind the scenes to do their jobs, then keep an eye on that name, Amadou Kone. There is further news, potential news, and then we've got one of the stronger links to finish with. I'm not sure if it was on your most recent chat with Lewis Steele, but we know that there's issues around Villa. And I saw you, DJ Baby, manifesting a particular move that could happen as a result of that. There's a few names here. Delap, Pedro, Xavi Simons, Sesko. I want you to walk through as many of them as you can, but start with that Villa angle, please.
This felt like a dagger to the heart the other day when Lewis put this out. So, yeah, as well as dismissing Delap, João Pedro, also said that in the names, Liverpool are not currently in for Morgan Rogers, which we know I've said, and we're both a fan of, and we'd love to do that. So that was a real sad element. And it's one we've manifested. I feel like we're 50% on our records because we manifested Alvarez a little bit, and that's come into public being, I think we're losing the Morgan Rogers battle at the moment. I'm not giving it up totally, but yeah, that's the first one to say. In terms of, the other ones, because we can rattle through these. Simons and Sesko, Lewis has said, yeah, Liverpool had scouts, didn't they, at the game? They're looking at both of those. I'm not sure we're the biggest fans on both, but it's probably not worth saying too much more on that. Bar price. I've seen Sesko's price suggested in Germany now, Trev. Over 80 million euros. And, you can get favourable terms if you chop it up and, don't have to pay that release clause. But it's a lot of money for a player that if you're not certain on, it's a high gamble, isn't it, on that one? So we won't go into my Xavi Simons stuff because we've been through that before as well. But Kirk, as he mentioned as well, that, yeah, there seems to be the one that's red hot favourite, the hottest link. Of course it is. We mentioned Kirk as a million times now, but Liverpool want to be respectful. Bournemouth are still going in the season, aren't they? So that's kind of quiet at the moment. Expected to accelerate after the season. And I never thought I'd say this before, Trev. We have a lot of things we say on the transfer show. TikTok. Lewis Steele revealed or said to keep an eye on Nico Williams, the Bilbao winger, the Spanish international for Liverpool, on TikTok. Now, he wasn't doing some sort of breakdancing via diversity, and he wasn't making a lemon drizzle cake as they seem to on TikTok. He was giving transfer rumours. So there you go. An angle for this show. We're getting information off TikTok now.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that. But we have one further name that, to be fair to Milos Kerkez, is giving him a run for his money as the most commonly linked player to Liverpool, and that is Mr. Frimpong. And there's a lot to like in terms of him moving to the club, but I think where an awful lot of people are having issues is when they start to think about him as a like-for-like replacement for Trent Alexander-Arnold, and they think, well, what was the thing that most people were a bit down on when it came to Trent, whether for right or wrong, was his rigorous defending or lack thereof.
Yeah.
So we kind of know, don't we, about Frimpong, that it's definitely not the top part of his game, that his real strength is in his attacking football. So it's the story that won't go away, though, Dave. So walk us through what the latest is on this one.
I'm struggling with this a bit, that in terms of the info I've got and how I think we both see it in terms of, he's smiling on the screen. I'm not smiling when I'm watching him not defending. And yes, it's a different system for Leverkusen and the way they play. I get all of that. My worry is the info we're getting, is it starting to stack up while there's a real chance of this? And again, a little bit it feels like, I want to say nerd because that's too far, but the principles are stacking up as to why the Liverpool are considering doing this. Homegrown, rapid, good age, release clause. We know we love release clause, especially ones where, if you're honest, you pay the release clause and he's worth more as soon as you signed him, isn't it? So that's something our people like as well. Also, as the info we've got, covers down the right, as it's phrased, which it's weird that that's being phrased as a positive that could maybe in a system cover Salah as well. And, that could allow Chiesa to depart as well as being an option to cover right back. Maybe this is just me and people can disagree or not. Isn't that why you have a right back? Isn't that why you have a right winger? Not someone that just covers the right. And also, I am terrified in a way that if this comes to fruition, if Mo Salah's on the right and Frimpong is on the right, Dominic Szoboszlai will be dead after 38 minutes. Like, legally declared dead doing the covering running, won't he? Because who's doing the defending a little bit? It worries me, this one, Trev. But we're only sharing what we're told. Liverpool are seriously looking at this and triggering that release clause.
Yeah, well, as we speak, the so reliable Fabrizio Romano has mentioned the Frimpong thing in a list of other bits and bobs, including Dean Huijsen, Amorim wanting Bruno to stay, and Liverpool not being in for Kevin De Bruyne, whatever that's worth. We will get ourselves around the Premier League now and have a look at a few other bits and bobs. And we'll return to the Villa and PSR thing because it's as good a place as any to start, and it's what got us hopeful that they might ever part with someone like Rodgers. So what's the latest there with them and what they need to do? Because I've been told they need to make at least one big sale.
Yeah, absolutely. That 30th of June deadlines, they got to make a sale to meet the PSR requirements. And there's a lot of journals suggesting that with transfer window 1 opening up on the 1st of June, they'll look to go early because they've got signings they want to make at the same time, haven't they? And they've got plans. We don't know if they'll be in the Champions League. Now, I'm trying not to get too hopeful on this because the manifestation then is, yes, Morgan Rodgers could be on the market and they could need to sacrifice. That's the one. We're all in for that. All in. Maybe just temper that a little bit because the 3 names that are coming up are Leon Bailey, a lot of Saudi clubs interested. Emi Martinez, a lot of Saudi clubs interested as well. Quite not old in goalkeeper terms, but I think he's like 32, isn't he? Not young as well. So that's the option. And I'm probably pronouncing this name wrong. I think there's a player called Baranchea who's done very well for them on loan at Valencia. So that's their first port of calls, the ports in the storm to sell, aren't they, in that regard? So I'm trying not to get too high on that. All I'm kind of hoping is that may fall through or that might not come to fruition. So Morgan could be on the docket. But even the other one that people are talking about, especially a lot of the Villa journalists, Boubacar Kamara has not signed that new contract, has he? He's waiting to see about Champions League and what happens as well, with a couple of years left to go. So I'm almost sad when I say this. I'm desperate to hear Morgan Rodgers, Liverpool. I'm trying to manifest it. And Villa PSR is like, come on, this is stepping into it. So it is possible, but the news tends to be there'll be far more others put to the sword before him.
Yeah, I'd keep an eye on that Martinez one. I think that's got real legs. Arsenal are up next. Arsenal, once dubbed specialists in failure by Mr. Jose Mourinho, living up to that particular billing in recent weeks and now having to give us a guard of honor at the weekend. I was saying on Twitter today, it'll even be funny if we lose because they won't even be able to celebrate it in any way, shape or form, although some of them are probably desperate enough that they would. One way or the other, we've been told by their manager, who's proven himself to be such an odd set of lads, that they need lots and lots of work because, not only have they had decimation via injuries, but all of their fans, all of their players, it seems, are in this sort of lamenting the misfortune that they've had to undergo. So we are quite aware, and there seems to be big rumors that there's going to be quite a bit going on. Some people trying to say that his job was in danger. I don't think that's the case at all. I think he's going to get back big time. One of the ones I saw linked to Arsenal during the week was Gyökeres. It kind of pains me that he isn't being linked to Liverpool every week, because of all of those strikers that we're being linked to, I understand the level he plays at. You don't have to shout at me. But God, he bangs in goals, man. I don't understand why we aren't a constant link to him as well. But talk to us about Arsenal, the likelihood of them going big again this summer, and who might be involved.
Yeah, all the info we're getting is, and maybe it's not sad because he's just funny, and obviously he's telling everyone they're the best team in Europe, aren't they? So maybe that will encourage players as well. But yeah, all the info seems to be they're set to back him and back him big. In terms of a goalkeeper, I think it's pronounced Juan Garcia coming in, or their favourites from him, I think it's Espanyol, in the mix for a player we've mentioned before as well, Bino Gittins on the left wing, that actually are looking for a left winger. We talked about Nico Williams before, but they are speaking to Dortmund about him. On the screen, as you mentioned, this feels like one that Ornstein's mentioned it. Many journalists have mentioned it. It's coming up again. Arsenal seem right there for Victor Gyökeres, don't they? I think most people expect him to end up there as the striker that they're desperately seeking. But maybe the most interesting one for me of this transfer show was getting this bit of information above all others, Trev. That it's not just Gyökeres they're looking at. Arsenal are also, to supplement Gyökeres, this is important to say, not instead of, speaking to Ipswich's Liam Delap. That Arsenal are now in the mix for that, as in terms of they want a couple of strikers. Yes, Gyökeres is the main target, but Arsenal are now in the mix for 30 million release clause, Liam Delap as well. So all the info we're getting, like you said, I know a lot of people are going on, they might dismiss him. That's all those types of things. All the info we're getting is they're going to back him, and they're going to back him big again.
I mean, just a tremendous way to be living your life if you're Lego head, just kind of constantly failing upwards. Remarkable stuff. Just put out the hand and get handed the bag again. Off we go to another cry. Remarkable stuff. We'll see. And yes, whoever it was in the chat there, I didn't mean it literally be funny. I want to kick the living shit out of them at the weekend for what it's worth, because of the disrespect that I've perceived from people at the club about Liverpool's achievement, mainly their manager. But that's a whole different story, and we don't have time to get sidetracked by it at the moment. Bryan Mbeumo, someone who was very regularly linked with moves away to Liverpool as much as anywhere else, but someone else seems to have gone into the driver's seat for him. And then we might move sideways to Chelsea. And we all saw the weird Nkunku to Liverpool story that broke, I think, in between this show and the last one too. So talk to us about Mr. Mbeumo first of all, and then move sideways to Chelsea and what's going on there, or maybe going on there.
Yeah, I think as it's on the screen, Brentford's captain said he's likely to leave in the summer. I don't think that's any surprise. He said at the start of the season he wants to move to a bigger club. Bryan Mbeumo, he's had a good season, hasn't he? And the two in the mix, I don't know if the names will be surprising to people. Newcastle, very much interested in him. And Manchester United having a good look at Bryan Mbeumo as well. Quite a few reports on that one. Manchester United, who it seems to be, these are the two names, isn't it? Bryan Mbeumo and Matthias Cunha. Whether they're going to have the money, whether they're going to have that Champions League money to do them both. But those seem to be the names. A full expectation that Mbeumo moves to, not being disrespectful to Brentford, but a club at the next level. It just makes sense the way he's doing this season. And then, as you said, I mean, Chelsea, Sweeney Todd's not really ramped up yet. I'm hoping we're going to see a bit more for him anytime soon. But the stories, as we said, Nkunku 100% looking to leave. That's well known. He's expected to move on. But Moises Caicedo using Saudi interest very well to try and negotiate himself an even fatter new contract with Chelsea, because he's only got about 7 years left to go. So you've got to be careful on these types of things as well. And people actually believe the reports that said he chose Chelsea over Liverpool and they only offered him 125 grand. Like, if you were silly enough to fall for that, come on. But Moises Caicedo will probably sign an extension. God knows what Chelsea will put him up to. 11 years left to go or something like that. But we'll see what that brings.
That's freaking hilarious. And listen, watch this space. No way Sweeney doesn't go pure mental between now and the opportunity to move. It's going to happen. It always does. We'll finish with City because City are, regardless of what way you look at it, there's a sort of an overhaul going to happen there. Yes, they can welcome back probably their best and most effective players from injury for next campaign, but there's going to be movement there, you'd imagine. What are we hearing there in terms of any of the links that may be believable or have something behind them?
Yeah, we said was it 3 weeks ago or so, we said they're having a serious look at Gibbs White at Nottingham Forest and Florian Wirtz at Leverkusen. And one of those names pretty much got extinguished on the European part, which we'll come to very shortly, which leaves the other one. So you can probably work it out because it's Morgan Gibbs White on the screen, and quite a few suggesting that this is the player Manchester City, as we mentioned, are looking to get. And I'm going to be honest on this. From everything we're hearing, Trev, I almost expect this to happen because Forest are going to miss out on the Champions League now, aren't they? And also, from a stylistic profile and the way he plays, a lot of the analysts are saying Gibbs White is perfect. They're perfect replacement for Kevin De Bruyne in terms of his legs, his pace, everything he's got in a better side as well. So not encouraging it, but I would bet that Morgan Gibbs White ends up at Manchester City this summer.
Watch this space for that one. I think it's a good shout. In terms then of moving around Europe, just a couple of things to finish the show. We'll start in Germany, where Eric Dyer may be on the move. You've got a Jonathan Tah story as well. And you just mentioned Florian Wirtz, so you can go back to round up what you mentioned early on in terms of how he's not likely to get the City, but there's a reason for that.
Yeah, if you can see it on the screen. So I'm lucky, this is Wirtz's comments from this week. Lucky to have so many excellent clubs right on my doorstep. Funny that. And now be able to play for one of the best clubs in Germany and Europe. It's funny how he said his doorstep, because all the reports in Germany are that Florian Wirtz has told Leverkusen he wants to move to Bayern Munich and be their star, which he's a German star. Where do German stars move to? And to be honest, it'll make that league even duller because they'll have Wirtz and Musiala. Do you know what I mean? In terms of the two next German superstars. But everyone fully expects that one to happen. One player that isn't sticking around to see it happen, Eric Dyer. Who would have thought that Eric Dyer, with his ability, would be playing for Bayern Munich and Monaco at this stage of his career? But that's where he's off to Monte Carlo to maybe enjoy a Grand Prix and concede goals there. So that's where Eric is off to. And then speaking of centre-halves, Jonathan Tah. So a name that's liked by a lot of clubs, will be on a free. Yeah, Barcelona are looking at him, but we know Barcelona's interest and troubles. We know as well that Manchester United are looking at him. So it's ultimately up to Jonathan Tah as a centre-half to pick where does he want to end up. But plenty happening in Germany at the moment.
It's hard to believe some of the options available to some of these guys. Many moons ago, Jonathan Tah to Liverpool was a thing for some people, but that's a long way away now. We'll do Real Madrid next, because in the Konate story, there was a link to how Real wanted Konate and Saliba. You can only imagine the crying in North London if that occurred. Is there anything to this, do you think?
All the Spanish reports would have you believe that. You can't get anything in the UK, being honest, people, when we tried sort of dig into this, but plenty of discussion on the continent and rumours this way. The only thing for this is, as you've mentioned recently, there's a lot of reports coming out today that Real have now advanced or are trying for Dean Huijsen, which, let's be honest, Huijsen is cheaper. Huijsen is Spanish, so would count as homegrown for them as well. And it's Huijsen's dream move. We don't really know, do we, about Saliba? And also, I just happen to think that Saliba is the most overrated defender in world football. I'm not saying he's a bad player, but Gabriel's always the better one of the two. And we've seen it in the Champions League that without him, Saliba's looked a little bit suspect. Just my opinion on that as well. And it's interesting. They're clearly looking at centre halves that we know, unfortunately, Konate's in the mix. They're looking at him on a potential free. So if I had to bet, and I don't say this with great confidence, but I think Madrid for Huijsen is more likely than Saliba. But we'll have to see what this summer brings.
And to finish up then, our last story is obviously Saudi related. We save it to last most of the time because it has obviously got the great potential to be the great disruptor. Some of these windows have not proven to be the case, but it does feel like there's a big one in the offing. And there's at least one massive Premier League star that is being linked with a move there. If not quite in his prime, not far off it. And we know as well that there is interest in talent across the board, not just in the players, but in managers as well. So walk us through the latest Saudi news.
Yeah, this Club World Cup just has a real potential to be a massive disruptor, doesn't it? And the Saudis really want to make a splash at this. So Al Hilal will be there, have been linked with, as it says on the screen there, Marco Silva, former Everton, current former Fulham head coach. So they are looking for a high-profile person to be in charge there. So it is interesting. Also, this was insane when we saw it, but even his agents come out and spoken on it. Saudi clubs ahead of the Club World Cup looking at Bruno Fernandes. Rattigan himself, the legendary captain who, throws his arms up and all that. But apparently scoring a few goals in the Europa League. I mean, Trev, the reports on this, that they're prepared to go big. If Manchester United can somehow con over 100 million quid out of the Saudis for Bruno Fernandes, they should drive him there on the 1st of June, literally. And I know they could even get the Champions League route through winning the Europa. But, I mean, he's 29, nearly 30, isn't he, Fernandes, as well? We know all the question marks about his attitude, but they have the potential for a very short period of time. They could be our transfer window sparkler, is the way I'm going to phrase it. Burn brightly and burn fast for that transfer window one, because they've got that Club World Cup in mind. And I just think for a very short period, and we like it, they've got a chance to be proper disruptors in this system.
So we've done it. I think we've gotten through all the stories you want to get through, but you usually have at least one thing up your sleeve, or at least one thing that you want to clarify before we do wrap it up. So I'm going to leave the last word to you, my friend.
This is going to sound weird, but this Liverpool now is completely different to when Jurgen Klopp was in charge of recruitment. And that's not being derogatory. I adore Klopp. He's an absolute hero of mine, but the style and the way it was done. What I mean by this, people, is if you think about Jurgen Klopp style recruitment towards the end, it was limited players of a similar profile or nothing, wasn't it? It was, we want Caicedo. No, not going to get him. Okay, Lavia, no. It was a physical number 6. And he settled on Endo because, that was in his list or acceptable for him. There was no real bending on that. What we're hearing now is, and it comes back to something I said last week, Trev, as well. The only thing I'm certain of, even in that forward line, is that Darwin Núñez is off. That's the only thing you can be certain. There's almost, it's probably a better word than this, but there's contingencies on top of contingencies. We said it the other week, like Isak, top target, Alvarez now in the mix. They want an elite striker. If they can't get that, the contingency, as they said, will be they'll look at someone who can play wide, but also could move up top and look at options that way. And we mentioned the name last week. I'm not surprised this summer if Liverpool buy someone who's maybe, their fourth choice preference or fourth choice option in a position that they are looking at a lot of options. And looking at a lot of options doesn't mean signing a lot of players. Of course it doesn't. But all the noises are, we're trying not to use this phrase, Trev, but how can we not talk about a big summer? Simple as that.
Probably because we've spoken about war chests in the past, and that's been very painful. But look, all the signs are there that we have stuff to do, so hopefully a lot of it will get done. And you can rely on myself and Dave to walk you through whatever the hell we have been hearing. And Dave hears a lot from a lot of different places. He's always on the hunt for news, and it makes this show what it is. So thanks to Dave for that, as usual. Thanks to you if you've been listening and watching live. Thanks for your contributions in the chats, and just let's enjoy what's left of this season with all the potential that lies ahead. Good luck.